In this video, we're going to discuss the hero's journey, and I'm going to share my experience with the hero's journey. As a corporate dropout, I used this narrative framework or the story template to help me navigate where I was in my story. And I discovered it early on because I knew that this was a story that I wanted to tell or needed to tell. But I also learned early on that I needed some structure, and I didn't have any structure to my storytelling at the time, and I felt like I would reach kind of like a place, and I couldn't complete like what I was trying to tell, and I realized it was because I wasn't finished living the story, and the hero's journey really helped me in that effect because it gave me something to anchor my experiences to. And so that's essentially what I'm going to share with you in this video, and hopefully you can extract something for yourself. The hero's journey, if you're not already familiar with it, this is otherwise known as the monomyth. It is a story or a narrative framework that exists. Has existed through thousands of years, many different cultures. You see it reflected in movies all the time. Once you learn it and you see it, you kind of can't unsee it. And then there are also different variations on the hero's journey. There is a heroine's journey. I think it's called the Virgin's Promise, which is also an effective tool that I've used in parallel with this. But in this video, we're going to focus on the hero's journey, which has a built-in masculine kind of a thing, whereas the Virgin's Promise is more of a feminine thing, where the hero goes out into the world and tries to conquer and has to deal with himself. The Virgin's Promise is more of an inward journey, if you will, but not to digress. So let's get into it. There's 12 steps on this, and we're going to work our way around the circle. This is typically seen as a circle. Each step isn't necessarily it doesn't have to go on for a very long time. Sometimes it could be just a moment where you pass through one of these particular steps. And then the other thing that I've experienced is that you can, circle around this kind of like a spiral, right? So it's not just a one-time thing. It can actually, kind of just keep spiraling. So let's get into it. 1, the ordinary world. This is where our story starts. This is where Dorothy is in Kansas, and for me, this is when I was in the cube. This is when I was going to work every day, and I'd show up a little bit late. My managers would be like, "What's up with this kid? Does he not care? Does he not want to be here?" And the truth is, I didn't want to be there, but I had learned to endure school and grad school, and it was just a part of the territory, right? You graduate, you start working indefinitely. And so that was the ordinary world. Working remote was not, for me, it wasn't going on at the time. I think I might have been able to work from home once or twice, but you couldn't really request it within my field because, they'd look at you sideways like, what do you mean you want to work from home? But anyway, I remember being able to work from home once and feeling like, this would be really cool to just be able to work from home all the time and just have the freedom to come and go as I please, the freedom to, not have to talk to my manager about what I wanted to do outside of work, if I wanted to take time off or go on a vacation or anything like that. And so the call to adventure was that desire within me to be free. And specifically, I had this phrase in my head that I just want to live and create. It was like a burning call. And but there was also a refusal of that call because I remember talking to my girlfriend at the time, who later became my wife, and I said, I think I could do this. It was spring 2012, 10 years ago. And she was like, "Are you sure?" And I wasn't sure. I was terribly afraid of the consequences of abandoning my job, not just a job, a career, and going on some like creative adventure. It was like a really nice fantasy, but in reality, it would mean giving up security. I don't know how I would have faced my family, and what I would have told them. They would have thought I was crazy, and so I held off on trying to leave the job, and I just stayed put. And during that time, I would say I was comfortably uncomfortable. And about a year later, a friend of mine sent me this video, and it was a online internet entrepreneur giving a speech about influence, core influence. And in that video, he shared some things that really resonated with me. And it was basically the fact that we have these two identities, or most people at least. We have our shell identity, the one that we show up with at work, the one that we show up with in the world. And then we have this other inner secret identity that is, burning to come out, that wants to come out. And in order to live our core influence, those two identities have to merge, right? What's on the inside has to become on the outside. And that spoke to me. And I count that as meeting a mentor, because prior to that, I had never really entertained the idea of making a living online. It just didn't seem realistic, or it didn't make any sense to me. I remember seeing like people selling these blog courses on like how to blog, and just all things that to me at the time seemed like completely illegitimate. Like, real people don't make money doing this stuff. We go to work, right? That was my thought process at the time. But I went through a series of crises, which I discuss in another video, my story from corporate America, or my story from engineering to making a living online. I'll share the link to that video below. But I went through a series of crises that brought me to the threshold. And the threshold was, when I finally decided that, okay, like, I have to now do this. It was more painful. It was becoming more painful for me to stay in the job than it was for me to face whatever I'd have to face outside of it. And that, even though what I would have to face outside of it was, very painful, the dread and the anxiety that I would feel, the knot in my stomach that I would feel, going to work and having to essentially hide myself, or hide who I really wanted to be at my core. And so I crossed the threshold, and that's where our hero now runs into a series of tests and obstacles and trials that must be overcome. And as a corporate dropout, that primary trial and test was, how are you going to make money? And so in that other video, I shared kind of the length of that. But along the way, you meet allies and enemies. And so you can call my clients the allies, and the enemies the internal antagonist that would, remind me that, who are you? What do you think you're doing? Are you really good enough at this? Like, what are you trying to prove? What are you trying to get over? And so this is a necessary period for our hero, because this is where our hero learns what it's going to take, and builds up the skills, essentially, that he's going to need later on when he goes through this ordeal and resurrection. Now, before I go on to the approach, going back to meeting with the mentor. So I mentioned one kind of metaphorical mentor, but essentially the mentor kind of gives you a roadmap of sorts, or some kind of a tool that you can pull out later on when you really need it. And so for me, it was, that awareness of needing to merge my worlds and become whole in order to successfully accomplish what it is I wanted to accomplish. And so here we get to the approach, where we're approaching the ordeal. And this is typically called approaching the Innermost Cave. And this is where our hero has to essentially go face to face with like his biggest fear, or her biggest fear, like that, the darkness, right? And for me, that happened a couple years into the journey, right? So I'm getting tested. I'm learning all these different kinds of skills, like how to market online, and I'm learning about story structure. I'm learning about the hero's journey. I'm learning about myself. And I remember a goal that I had was I wanted to be able to get a significant result for a client in order to validate some of these skills that I had learned. And once I got that result that I thought I needed or wanted, which was, basically just helping a client turn their business around and make a bunch of sales. Once I felt like I got that result, which validated my expertise, I thought, all right, I can now do this for myself. That was the goal, right? It was like, if I can do this for someone else, then I can do this for myself. And I abandoned that client, or I was like, all right, I'm going to now focus on my family and my family business. And that was me approaching the Innermost Cave, because again, I was giving up a big source of income, and I felt like I needed to do that once again in order to reap the reward that I wanted. And so the ordeal was, again, how are you going to make money? What are you going to do? And you got to sell something. And so I was stuck trying to sell my time and my services and my energy and my expertise. And I didn't want to do that anymore, because I felt like every time I did that, it was taken away from what I really wanted to accomplish and achieve. And so I went through this very lengthy ordeal, which manifested in the form of multiple eviction notices, as I wasn't able to make enough money to pay the rent and pay the bills. And it was a very arduous ordeal, but it was at a tough time, because my second child was being born, and but ultimately I endured, and we endured. And on the other side of that ordeal, I finally found my reward, and the reward was in a number of different partnerships that allowed me to now exercise the skills that I had learned in a way that didn't require me to sell my services and sell my time. And I discussed that in another video where I talk about my experience with affiliate marketing and content. But essentially the reward was finally, after some years of this ordeal, finally being able to let up off the gas and be able to make money without selling my time. That was the reward for going through this ordeal. And then I started the road back, which I've been on for a number of years as well. And so the road back is like, okay, after our hero has slayed the dragon, now he's got to go back to where he was coming from. And so the road back for me has been consolidating these experiences, making sense of them, sorting them, extracting whatever value that I can from these experiences, which brings me to the resurrection. Now, the resurrection somewhat mirrors the ordeal in a sense that there's always that last threat, that last kind of does our hero really have it? Is our hero really, has he really been transformed? Is he really a new creature? And so the resurrection is that ultimate test of, do you really got it? Like, are you really now who you say you are? Can you do what you think you can do as a result of going through this? And I feel like right now I'm in the midst of this resurrection as I'm being recalled to share these experiences and share these lessons and share what I've learned, because that is the elixir. And that's the final step, is returning with the elixir and returning back to where you started. So, now not as many people are going to work in a cubicle. I mean, I don't even really know what the corporate landscape looks like anymore post-COVID, but essentially I'm returning back to the people and the world and the environment that I left. But I'm not returning back the same, obviously. I'm returning back with gifts. I'm returning back with insights, with a perspective, with something that has the potential to heal, something that has the potential to inspire, something that has the potential to invoke someone else's hero's journey. And so from this returning with the elixir, now we've completed the hero's journey, and I find that my call is to position myself here at the mentorship step, where I'm able to impart and teach and share these lessons with the next set of heroes that are preparing to make this journey. And I feel like, that is now my role as essentially like a guardian of the threshold. It's another word they use to describe this step. So that's been my experience with the hero's journey as a corporate dropout. Each time I reached a point where it was like, where am I? What am I going through? I referenced this, and it helped me in the sense of like I said, this is a story formula or narrative archetype that has played out thousands and thousands of times, in the world, in life, in our reality. It's a meta story, and anchoring to that meta, it's kind of like it gives me something to flow and move with. So hopefully it can offer the same kind of value to you, I hope. And I would love to know what your experience has been, or how you've used the hero's journey, either in your storytelling or in your life experiences, to help better process them.